So good evening, everyone. Uh, so for this session, which is very important today, it's breast cancer, and for that we have our esteemed chairperson, Dr. Deepak. He is a surgical oncologist at First Hospital, and we have Dr. Tilak, who is a medical oncologist at Pune. So I request the chairperson to please take over the session and introduce the panelist and moderator. Thank you.
So before the start, actually, Dr. Deepak and Dr. Tilak are actually from the armed forces. So both have worked together and they are old friends. And Dr. Tilak has been doing phenomenal work in time of COVID. So he is important instrument in making the COVID hospital in 10 days in Delhi during this COVID time. So congrats to him, and he's actually a true warrior in the COVID times.
Thank you, Chairperson, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ghanshyam Biswas. I request Dr. Deepak Rotre to introduce the moderator.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everyone. It's indeed a tremendous opportunity to be participating in this unique icon, and a special welcome to my good friend Tilak.
Thank you, sir.
It makes it all the more special to be co-chairing this session with you.
My pleasure, sir.
And we now have a very important session on breast cancer. I understand the first session is a panel discussion on early breast cancer.
Yes, sir.
Or are we opening with the metastatic adeno? No, this is something else I've got.
This is something else.
So by mistake, that topic
by
is
mistake,
correct.
sir.
Okay, so we are starting this session with a panel discussion on early breast cancer, which is a very important aspect. Now we're changing paradigms where surgery need not necessarily always be the first option, with increasing reliance on the IHC reports. So to moderate this session, may I request Dr. Anil Haroor to kindly call his panelists and begin this session. Dr. Anil Haroor, please.
Yeah, thank you to the organizers for having us here, and it's indeed a very unique icon, and we do miss the fellowship and the evening parties, but all the same, it's nice to be very comfortable and not travel anywhere and catch that early morning flight to go wherever you are. With that, let me invite my esteemed panel, Dr. Ashish Joshi, a medical oncologist from Mumbai, Dr. Rahul Jaiswal, medical oncologist, Ahmedabad, Dr. Rakesh Ramesh, surgical oncologist from Bangalore, Dr. Atul Samaya, surgical oncologist from Bhopal, Dr. Shefali Desai, surgical oncologist from Ahmedabad, and Dr. Krishna Prasad, the medical oncologist from Bangalore. Are we all here?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. And today what I intend to do is just keep it absolutely clinical and just keep it for the practicing oncologists, day-to-day questions that we are asked by our patients and by our fellow colleagues, and that is what the esteemed panel is going to guide us on. Even if so much research has been done, early breast cancer continues to have uncertainties, and that is what we want to point out today. So let me come to my first case straight away. On a routine screening mammogram, a 40-year-old lady has been diagnosed with an impalpable right breast lesion. She gives history of a 50-year-old sister who has been operated for ovarian cancer. Radiologically, it was BIRATS 4. Core biopsy has shown IDC grade 2, ER strongly positive, PR strongly positive, HER2 negative. So Dr. Shefali Desai, ladies first, I want to start with you. What will you advise her? Dr. Shefali Desai?
Ma'am, you'll have to unmute your mic.
Hello, now am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, since it's an impalpable lesion, of course, a good sonologist would have done a core biopsy, which has been done.
The core biopsy has been done. ER is 3+, PR is 3+, HER2 was negative.
Yeah, so I would like to know what is the T stage and the N stage, and then accordingly go ahead.
So basically, it is a non-palpable lesion. This was what was seen on the mammography. You can see that there are microcalcifications all around. There is a small lump here, which is roughly measured as around 1 to 1.5 centimeters. What I would specifically ask you was, would you do any other imaging? Would you want to do an MRI on this?
See, the way the microcalcifications are a little scattered and the core biopsy is positive for IDC. I don't know if it shows DCIS or not, but an MRI would definitely help, especially with the ovarian cancer history in the sister. So an MRI for other calcifications and for the opposite breast would definitely be advisable in this case.
So I would agree with that absolutely. Even the NCCN guidelines, though it mentions MRI as an optional tool, and MRI is definitely indicated in this because she's a young lady. We are going to have, if we have DCIS pictures, we are definitely going to think about mastectomy. Dr. Rahul, would you like to do a BRCA upfront in this patient? Would it interfere? Would it, sort of have an implication in your management?
The patient's ERPR status is positive. She's
Yes.
having strong ERPR positive. So, and there's a history of ovarian cancer in her sister. So,
Yes.
that is important, but it is not the thing that which I will stick and I will not plan other treatment till the BRCA is not available. I will do BRCA, but that is not a priority at present.
Right.
I will keep my workup list, and definitely I will do BRCA, maybe later on also. But upfront, if it would have been a triple negative breast cancer, then BRCA would have helped. But otherwise, for now deciding neoadjuvant, adjuvant, or surgical BRCA will not be much helpful.
So what I wanted to ask Dr. Shefali, in these patients, now suppose the BRCA is required, say in a triple negative, do you wait till the BRCA report comes and then decide on whether you want to go ahead with mastectomy or breast conservation? Or you would, in such a patient, you would go ahead with a mastectomy straight away?
No, I would not like to wait for a BRCA result. But if the microcalcifications are just localized to that area, even on mammo and MR, then you can definitely offer her a breast conservation. But if they are scattered along with DCIS, then a simple mastectomy with a sentinel lymph node would be more justified.
So this patient did have scattered microcalcifications, and we had to go ahead and do a mastectomy on her. As far as the axilla, would you do a sentinel or would you do an axillary clearance? Or, is the question too?
No, I think I would rather go for a sentinel.
Sentinel, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was the MRI as far as the NCCN guidelines are concerned. We did an MRM. Looks as if we were right on her because she had extensive DCIS, node negative. Again, ERPR was positive, 1.5 centimeters IDC. Dr. Atul, what is the next line of treatment that would advise her?
I presume she is menopausal, she is 40 years.
Yes.
So with more than a centimeter tumor, I would like to do a prognostic. I will advise a prognostic test to her, preferably Oncotype DX, considering extensive DCIS and more than a 1 centimeter tumor.
So, Dr. Krishna Prasad, she's a premenopausal lady. Would you think that has the data changed? Do you think that the TAILORx has changed our view as far as premenopausal ladies are concerned?
Yes, sir. I think it has. Previously, virtually all premenopausal patients used to get chemotherapy. Now we know that the data is quite strong, and with using gene expression profiles, we can have quite a good number of patients avoiding chemotherapy.
Yeah, so basically, I think now we have all these prognostic tests within into our guidelines. The 4 well-known tests, which are Oncotype DX, Mammoprint, Prosigna, and EndoPredict, all of them find their mention in guidelines and recommendations. So I think we are on course for advising these tests, and they have definitely led to a significant reduction in chemotherapy. The issue is whether these tests, which are based on data on Western population, are they valid for our population? And that is the question which even the TAILORx sort of addressed, and they said that the results as far as the black patients are concerned were different from the white population. So, Dr. Rahul, do you think that we should extrapolate results from these Western populations to other ethnicities, especially the Indian population? Dr. Rahul, Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir, I missed the question.
What I wanted to know is that we just heard Dr. Krishna telling us that the TAILORx is now playing an important role. The results of the TAILORx trial is playing an important role as far as the decisions regarding premenopausal women are concerned. So now that we know that, however, all these tests are best based on data from the Western population. So, and the TAILORx itself says that the results as far as the black patients were concerned in that population, in that group, was not similar to the white population. So, are we justified in extrapolating these results to other ethnicities and especially the Indian population?
Sir, of course, we are all using this CAN-ASSIST test, which is the Indian population-based more studies regarding the Indian population. We are using CAN-ASSIST more frequently. Oncotype DX, okay, theoretically it is a very good test, we can say, but practically how many patients we are sending for Oncotype DX when it is costing 2.5 lakhs rupees? Test will come, result will come after 4 weeks. And in this pandemic area, this transportation of the tissues, and this is a lot of big caution. So if theoretically, yes, Oncotype DX is the best test, most validated test, but practically we found a lot of problem in asking for Oncotype DX. So of late in Ahmedabad, many of our colleagues, as I work with many oncologists in Vedanta, we are now sending on this CAN-ASSIST test frequently. Turnaround time is also less, and the more the number of patients we will send, the more the test results will be validated. So I think it is a good thing to send CAN-ASSIST right now. We are sending that more frequently, and we are. I have sent in 4 or 5 patients in last 1 month, and I am following the results also. So,
Dr. Rakesh, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Dr. Rakesh, this test is a little different as from the Oncotype DX. This is an IHC-based test with clinical parameters thrown in. So, how do you think this holds out against a test like Oncotype DX or say a MammaPrint, which is a gene assay?
Sir, let me just take the question which you have asked before, that all the tests, Oncotype DX, MammaPrint, all are the Western test. How can we follow it in India or in other countries away from Western? When you take the history of treatment of breast carcinoma, most of the trials which we are studying are all from the Western thing, which we are blindly following. Now is the time when we start asking questions only because the cost of the test is very high. So when you think about the cost of the test, we should think of made in India tests which are less costly with a new technology. IHC based tests made in India, I think there is only one company, that is Oncostem, which makes the CAN-ASSIST. So far what we have seen is their biomarkers of 5 plus 3 clinical things added together so far has found to be extremely good. So I think that is gene-based test and this is IHC-based test. So far we are happy, our patients are happy, because most of the patients cannot afford 2.5 or 3 lakhs rupees, which they are very happy with 60,000 rupees of CAN-ASSIST. And if they can skip the chemotherapy, they are all happy. And so far we have not seen anything going wrong with the test. So it should be good, and I think we should encourage the made in India tests. More tests should come, and probably we should get into the genetic testing also.
So you are vocal about local.
Yes, sir.
More on
yes.
So more than that, I think basically for me, what works is I think we require clinical validation. Of course, they are collecting good data, and there have been publications. I think last time Dr. Purvish Parikh had taken a good survey about the use of this test. I also have been using this test, and precisely for the same reasons why what Rahul and you have mentioned, because of the cost concerns, as well as you need some validation as far as your decision is concerned, and this provides a good enough validation. So far, my experience also has been good, but I think we have to wait for data, because I think scientifically also the gene assay work is more informative. And any other thoughts, Ashish? Would you like to come on this?
Yes, I think we may debate about the type of test that we use depending on the level and the depth of the genome that one test studies. But conceptually, what we are hinting at is the patient with a high clinical risk and low genomic risk. So typically, traditionally, those patients who would put them on chemo actually do not benefit with the adjuvant chemotherapy, and that's where the genomics triumphs over clinical, and that is what the hint that we are getting. And if you have a assay which is probably more cost effective and probably tells us the same thing as what would a deep or a bigger assay would tell, then one would tend to use it. But conceptually, understanding is that the genomic triumphs clinical. That is what all the data, if you see TELERx, MANDEC, MammaPrint, everything, it basically tells us that it's the genomics which matters more than the clinical.
So all the more reasons why we should have some more local data, even if it is genomic. I think all these, even these molecular tests should be, the prognostic markers should be tested in Indian populations also.
Absolutely.
Anybody else has a conflicting view, or anybody else wants to voice his view? Dr. Atul, Dr. Shefali?
The important thing about this test is basically whatever guidelines we are following. The second thing, there is disconcordance between the different tests. Whether you see the Oncotype DX, MammaPrint, there is only concordance of around 30-35%. And maximum up to a 70%. So even the different test in a different population behaving differently. So that just applying that data of Western population and Indian population is probably not right.
Right. So I think we concur that this is an important additional tool to whatever armamentarium we have. It has to be encouraged. I think the pooling of data and further, validation of this data will definitely make it stronger. And I think we will have a good. Yes.
Dr. Krishna Prasad here. Sir, this CAN assist has been compared in Western population with the Oncotype DX, and it shows pretty good results. Yes. In fact, the problem with Oncotype DX is intermediate score. If you look at the TAILORx data, 6,400 patients out of 9,000 and odd were in that intermediate score. And in CAN assist, it is pretty much easier because there's only two stratification, and it seems to correspond to whatever the Oncotype DX says. So I think in terms of validation, I think CAN assist has done quite a good job. And I think most of us who have been using CAN assist are pretty happy with it. I think usually where we are using it is in patients who at the back of our mind we know may avoid chemotherapy, just like the patient whom you have put. But we need a second opinion, like from someone to say, yes, you are on the right track.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would also agree with, we do CAN assist also, and I think I'm happy with it.
Sir, also, I'm Rakesh here. If you take the ESMO guidelines, Lumen and Lay, they don't even ask to test anything, and they are not even recommending chemotherapy. They directly say, give endocrine therapy only. So there is no need to have a high genetic gene-based test to say that you have to give endocrine therapy only. So as Dr. Krishnappa has mentioned, it is like giving us a second opinion regarding whether our decision is right or not. So I think CAN assist has traveled a lot in a short period of time. Otherwise, we should think of other companies coming up with similar tests and show what is wrong or which is better.
Great, great. So I think let's move on to the next, and this is the ICMR guidelines, which talk about the utility of tests like they say IHC4 or an immunohistochemistry based test. So it has now come into the ICMR guidelines, but whether it has not yet come into the normal oncology guidelines like NCCN that we follow.
Sir, 1 minute. Sir, 1 minute. Before completing, sir, you are saying IHC4. All over the world, Ki-67 is not a standardized test. So ICMR cannot put up such things without discussing with the oncologists all around. And they should not say recommend Oncotype DX, MammaPrint, everything, and then saying IHC4.
IHC is not true. Absolutely.
So I think as an oncology community, I think we should write to ICMR before putting up all these guidelines.
Yeah, true. So I think that is a point well taken. I think we should do that. So what are the hormonal strategies you would follow, Dr. Atul?
Basically, she is a premenopausal low risk female considering the T1 lesion and N0 disease. I would be happy to give tamoxifen only for 5 years.
Ovarian suppression?
See, doesn't look like a very high risk as such if considering only T1 disease and N0 strongly ERPR positive. So hormonal suppression, probably we have to see with the person who are high risk for the relapse, like the nodal disease, heavy nodal disease, or the grade 3 tumors. I consider the hormonal suppressions in those patients with ovarian suppression in those patients. Early disease, I think the tamoxifen will be a good choice for her.
So would all of us agree with that? Anybody for ovarian suppression? Because
Dr. Heru, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What would be the age of this patient? I'm sorry.
40.
Okay.
40
So,
pre-menopause.
okay. So
We
for
give
me,
ovarian suppression in patients who are less than 35 years or of age, or any patient who is candidate for chemotherapy. That means high risk patient. In that, we give ovarian suppression along with tamoxifen or AI. Otherwise, if the low risk, no chemotherapy, and above 35, ovarian suppression is not required.
Sir, in this
Absolutely.
case, since she has a family history, it will be a good idea to counsel the patient and let her have a prophylactic oophorectomy with hysterectomy.
So
Because
Krishna,
anyway,
I would probably wait for the BRCA results to come in. Yeah, BRCA 1 and 2 to come in, and then probably go ahead with a prophylactic oophorectomy. So let me come to my next case. This was a young pregnant lady. She was 28, diagnosed to have a 3.5 centimeters duct carcinoma, triple negative. She is in the 24th week of pregnancy. So Dr. Shefali, again, how would you go ahead with this patient? 24th week of pregnancy, 3.5 centimeters duct carcinoma,
Yeah.
triple negative.
Depending on the size of her breast with the tumor, that the ratio will be very important for the final management. But counseling with the patient is also very important. Since she's in the 24th week of pregnancy, so obviously termination is not an option. So the line of treatment could be surgery if the mastectomy with axillary clearance, because breast conservation may not be feasible with a 3.5 centimeters unless the breast size is huge. And this is what the counseling I would like to do.
So recently there was a Supreme Court judgment that in extenuating circumstances till the 24th week of pregnancy you can terminate. I think Dr. Nikhil Datar from Mumbai had that case won that case in the Supreme Court with some genetic abnormalities. So that is one thing that we should remember, that option is there till 24th week if the patient so desires. But yes, you are right. I mean, we can go ahead with surgery. As regards since she is in the second trimester of pregnancy, and the choice of surgery, as you have rightly mentioned, would be a mastectomy. And if she wants to continue the pregnancy, is there any role of chemotherapy, Dr. Ashish?
Yeah, so in the second trimester and third trimester, one may consider giving adriamycin-based chemotherapy, which can be safely given in pregnancy, and there would be a role there.
Okay. So let me come to the next case. This is a young lady of 34 years. She wishes to have a breast conservation after a pre-op diagnosis of an infiltrating lobular carcinoma, 3 centimeter N1 disease. MRI shows a satellite nodule which is just 1 centimeter away from the tumor. 1 centimeter. ER is not very strongly positive. 5 on 8 is the Allred score. PR is negative. HER2 is 3+. She's got 1 child. So, Dr. Atul, what would be your management for this patient?
Just to give you a heads up, you have 3 minutes left for the panel.
Yes.
Okay, so this would be my last case.
This patient wants to preserve the breast, but she will be a high risk for the local recurrence, considering she already has 1 satellite nodules 1 centimeter away. So I have to discuss with the patient the options of mastectomy and reconstruction to her compared to breast conservation. And 3 centimeter tumor, she can undergo breast conservation surgery with the cornerectomy and reconstruction. But still, my preferred choice will be a mastectomy in her if she willing for that.
Any role of neoadjuvant targeted therapy? Considering the recent Dr. Ashish?
Yeah, I think this would be a very good candidate for a neoadjuvant chemotherapy. She's got weekly estrogen receptor positivity. She has got HER2 overexpressed. And in fact, if she's willing for a breast conservation therapy, which is possibly prohibited because of the satellite nodule, I would be inclined to use a neoadjuvant chemotherapy in discussion with the oncosurgeon as well as the patient. We have now adequate data for anti-HER2 agents, and we may debate it. But we have trastuzumab, pertuzumab combination. You have got a single anti-HER2 agent as well. So I think neoadjuvant chemo plus targeted would be definitely one on my cards here.
Yeah, so I think the Neosphere and the affinity data has now shown that even in triple negative, especially not in these patients, that you would go for a double blockade with pertuzumab and trastuzumab as well, which shows a better complete pathological response, not really survival, but better complete pathological response. My last thing would be on frozen section. I would like the opinion of the surgeons here, each one of you, whether you use frozen section and do you find it useful? Dr. Shefali?
Yeah.
Yes, I do frozen sections whenever indicated in BCTs, and I would definitely go for a frozen section whenever I do my BCTs. And they're pretty useful.
Dr. Atul?
I'm not doing routinely frozen section. If I feel the margin is closed or somewhere when I'm cutting the tumor, I found this is looking like a positive margin, then I only use the frozen section. Routinely, I do not do the frozen section.
Sir, in our
Dr.
center,
Rakesh?
yeah, in our center, we use frozen section, but we will not ask for entire margin. We will look for the closest margin and ask them to see. And our negative margin will be the negative ink margin final. But if it is in this particular case where we are discussing about lobular carcinoma, we go just like any other invasive ductal carcinoma. If it was carcinoma in situ, then we will give a little more margin, maybe 2 mm or 3 mm margin. But we definitely do frozen.
So in this case, why I asked you about frozen was, now we are running short of time, was because there was a satellite nodule. It is a multifocal tumor, and we did decide to go ahead with breast conservation. Now I will just run through the tumor.
Yeah, you will have to just summarize. Time is up.
Yeah. So just to summarize, I think we have now enough data. Early breast cancer is now in a very interesting phase, and we now have examined and understood the role of prognostic tests. These are tests which really help us to guide, and as Dr. Krishna rightly put it, get a second opinion without really getting a second opinion, validate our decisions. Lot of combinations as far as neoadjuvant therapy is concerned. And then I think, though we have not discussed it deeply, the role of neoadjuvant chemotherapy as far as early breast cancer is now emerging. And I feel with more data, we might soon find that like rectum and esophagus, breast also will go for neoadjuvant chemotherapy. Thank you all my esteemed panelists for giving their opinions and making this an interesting discussion. Thank you very much.